What is up, everybody? My name is Nader, and welcome back to the channel. And this is a different type of video. Well, kind of. Remember back when I was doing a show called Good Old Wrestling that I was reviewing the Ruthless Aggression pay-per-views from 2002? Well, I'm going to do that in video form here, but it's going to be sort of different. I'm not going to go too in-depth with the matches. I'm just going to talk about, for a few minutes, talking about the show, like what happened basically. I'll go through some of the highlights, but not in depth. But at the same time, I'm also going to give you my insights on stuff as well. And there's going to be no fancy editing or any of that. It's just going to be me rambling on for a few minutes talking about the show. So, Backlash 2002, I'm not going to review Royal Rumble, No Way Out, WrestleMania again because I already did that. If you want to see that stuff, just watch those streams. I mean, they're an hour long each. So, just to recap, Royal Rumble I thought was which was good. It was a good start. No Way Out was a good filler pay-per-view. WrestleMania was good, even though the main event, let's be honest, shouldn't have been the main event because Triple H Hogan and Rock should have been the main event. But of course, that didn't happen. Instead, Triple H Jericho was the main event, which was eh. So we get to Backlash 2002, April 21st, 2002, in Kansas City. 400,000 bought the show, and I watched the show roughly yesterday, where you kind of look back at the show, which actually, fun fact, this was like one of the last pay-per-views that was under the WWF banners before they went to the WWE, because I believe Judgment Day was the first official one. I think Insurrection might have been the first one, but I have to recheck. Um, Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler were the commentators. They're probably the best commentary duo, at least in my opinion. Definitely better than some of the commentary guys we got today. I mean, maybe for the exception of Pat McAfee and a couple other people. Nah, Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler, just chef's kiss. Uh, so we get our opening match here. Tajiri taking on Billy Kidman for the Cruiserweight Championship, which actually kind of a couple things to take away from this matchup here. First things first, they were actually using the WCW Cruiserweight title design instead of going with the WWF Cruiserweight title design, which they ended up going with, I think, a little while after this. But that is something to kind of keep in mind that beforehand they had the light heavyweight title. Then when they bought WCW, they ended up unifying both the belts, and then they ended up using the WCW Cruiserweight Championship design rather than making the original their own design, which they ended up doing later down the road. But that's something to take from that in terms of the design of the belt. Um, Also, Tori Wilson came out in a purple kimono, which that kind of ties into the whole, Tajiri's kind of, he's a heel now and he's abusing, Tori Wilson. He's being a bad boyfriend. Oh, that little rascal, Tajiri. And also Billy Kidman, who's the champion for the show. He came out in trunks. Now, if you watch WCW like I have, or I watched some of it, Billy Kidman always usually came out in, like the white tank top, the jean shorts. No, he came out in trunks, which was kind of strange. And also, I believe Tori Wilson was with Billy Kidman in real life at this time, so again, something you could take from this matchup here. But besides that, it was a pretty good opening matchup for the Cruiserweight Championship. It was very fast paced, something to wake up the crowd, get the crowd hyped for the rest of the show. It was very back and forth, high flying stuff, Hurricane Ranas from Billy Kidman. He had Tajiri doing his kicks, which, tell you the truth, he's very stiff with those. I don't know if it's just the way that he's making them sound, but they sounded really good. There was a couple particular spots where I think Tajiri's going for a springboard, and then Billy Kidman hits him with a drop kick to the back. I thought that looked nice, and then Billy Kidman hit the sit out spine buster off the top rope, which I thought again, that was a pretty sick looking maneuver. I really liked that. It looked really crisp. And in the end, I think the finish, I believe, was Billy Kidman was going for a power bomb, and Tajiri, sprayed him with the mist, which was red, so it made it look like he was bleeding. And Tajiri's the new cruiserweight champion, which I thought, okay, it was a pretty good match to start off the show. Nothing to kind of like write home about, but it's a good way to start off your show. And also throughout the show, we have some backstage segments revolving the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Woo! There was one involving Vince where Vince is like, "Let me tell you something, pal. You are now you understand that how to be an owner now because you understand that Stone Cold's treating you like crap." And then Ric Flair's like, "Yeah, I'll never be like you, Vince. I'll never be like you. Woo!" And then Vince is like, "Oh, I'll show you, pal. I'll show you." And then of course Flair. I think there was like another one later on in the show where you had Ric Flair. He's in the referee garb because he's going to be refereeing the match between Austin and Undertaker. And then Undertaker comes in with the "I'm watching you, boy. I'm watching you." Where it was definitely it was just to continue to build for Taker Austin. And then I think after Tajiri Kidman, we get a backstage segment with Bradshaw. This was before he was JBL, so he had like the tights, the APA tights. This was the long hair. And he and Farouk, they're meeting up. They're like, "Hey man, how's it going?" Because this was after the brand split just happened, so the APA just separated. So it was kind of like, "Hey, hey, how's it going?" And then we get to our next match, which was Scott Hall. Hey yo, um, which I kind of want to go on a tangent with Scott Hall here because he just recently passed away. Scott Hall was a fantastic worker, and Scott Hall is one of those rare guys that I think had it. Like he had the charisma, he had the look, he was great in ring. It just sucks that his personal problems kind of cost him being a world champion. But with that being said, even though he wasn't world champion, he did a lot for wrestling. I mean, without Scott Hall, you wouldn't have the NWO. I mean, the stuff with Shawn in the ladder match, probably one of the best Intercontinental champions. I mean, even the stuff with 1-2-3 Kid on Raw in '93, where, he was feuding with X Pac 1-2-3 Kid, and they had the upset on Raw. I mean, he's been involved with a lot of like big things. So I mean, Scott Hall should be recognized as one of the greatest of all time, and I like he should be. This match, however, between him and Bradshaw, which actually, again, another thing to take away from this, X Pac was coming out in the Kane mask because this was after, they beat up Kane and they put him on the shelf, which, yeah, the NWO at this time kind of sucked. This was right after WrestleMania 18. Hogan just turned face, so that kind of ruined things, and Kevin Nash got injured, and then it's like now things are kind of like in a big bad way, just to say here. Scott Hall versus Bradshaw, kind of going back to the match. It was okay. I mean, nothing worth talking about. I mean, there was nothing memorable about it. There was just, them punching each other. X Pac was trying to interfere. Farouk would, get his shots in. At one point, Bradshaw hits the clothesline from hell, which actually, to tell you this, Bradshaw has one of the best clotheslines in the business. Very, very stiff looking, very hard. It sucks that the match itself was just very forgettable. Of course, X Pac puts Scott Hall's foot on the rope. Farouk beats on X Pac, which distracts the referee. So then Scott Hall hits uh he hits a Bradshaw right in the dick and then basically just wins. It was just an okay match. It didn't like it's not a bad match. It's just a match that you could skip and just you wouldn't miss it. And then after this, we had Jazz, who's the women's champion at the time, take on Trish Stratus. Trish wins the number one contendership after she beats Molly Holly. And then Molly Holly gets pissed off before the match. She's like, "Oh, I believe that your women's champion shouldn't be a cheater." And then she beats up Trish Stratus for a bit. And then Jazz comes out. She's walking out. And then Jazz, like, she's just like, what do I do? And then that's where she and Trish have their match, which, again, for what it is, it was good. Like, I'd say it is a little unrealistic that Trish Stratus would be, able to fight her way out of it, especially putting up that much fight after getting beat up. But it was pretty solid. I mean, it was, again, back and forth. I liked what they were able to do here. Jazz, puts her in the STF and then she makes her tap, which it was, but then Jim Ross like, "Oh well, you should thank Molly Holly." I'm like, no. I mean, to be fair, I mean, If it was like a 12-second match, yes, but it was like it went on for a bit, so it's not necessarily like you can just fully say, "Oh, Mighty Molly or Molly Holly was the reason for the win." I'm like, nah, I wouldn't go that far. And then, after the match, they're like, Jazz, what do you think about that? And then Jazz just walks away, like she's kind of dead inside a little bit. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then I believe the next match, I believe, was Brock Lesnar. This was actually Brock Lesnar's pay-per-view debut match against Jeff Hardy, which, before this, Paul Heyman's being a creep towards Lita. And then, of course, Lita's like, no, get the fuck out of here, you asshole. And then you have Paul Heyman like, oh, you know, this is there's gonna be hell to pay for you, Lita. And then, Brock takes out Matt Hardy a week before the match. And then, Paul Heyman before the match is like hyping up Brock Lesnar. He's like, you're the next big thing, Brock Lesnar. And then you had the match, which honestly, it's what it needed to be. I thought it was a great showcase for Brock, which is you didn't necessarily have to do a whole lot with Brock and Jeff. It was just more like Jeff got his moves in, but Brock basically looked like a beast. Like he showed off his strength, when he was like getting covered with the loud press, he like push him off of him. I think at one point, I think Jeff hits a whisper in the wind at one point, which looked great. And then Brock had him like the back breakers, and he was like, putting him over his knee multiple times, which I thought that looked great. Then Brock hits the F5 on the chair, which I thought that kind of looked, they kind of missed that, but that's fine. Then the end of the match, like Brock Lesnar powerbombing Jeff Hardy over and over again until the referee's like, no, we got to end the match. I think, honestly, it's what it needed to be. I think it worked for this match. If there was any other match on the card, I'd say, But for Brock, it worked. It showed him off as a badass. And to tell you the truth, it worked for him, so I was like, all right, this is great. Next match on the card was Kurt Angle and Edge, which the build to this match is kind of silly. Well, I wouldn't say silly, but it does have some silly elements. Of course, as the iconic, Kurt Angle's looking at the pictures, and then of course there's like the "you suck," behind the pictures. Which honestly, to tell you the truth, this match is really good. I mean, it's kind of like the back and forth. Like it's just the story of these two know each other. These two know each other like the back of their hands, and they're giving it their all in this match, which I thought, and some of the stuff in the match, like Kurt Angle doing the Germans, which Kurt was able to get a really good height off of him because Edge was like selling his ass off there. I really love the spot, where Edge goes up to the top rope and then Kurt Angle runs up top and hits the belly to belly. Like I've always loved when Kurt Angle does that because he does it very smooth. It's very smooth looking. And then you had there was a few other spots in the match. It was very back and forth. There was also a great spot where Kurt Angle, is getting frustrated because he can't beat Edge, so he grabs a steel chair, goes to hit Edge, and then he misses, but then the chair catches the rope and then it bounces off him and dinks him, and Edge hits the Edge-o-matic, and then of course Kurt Angle kicks out, and there's a couple false finishes here and there. Edge hits the execution kick out, Kurt Angle hits the Angle slam kick out. And I like the ending of the match, too. It's not like Kurt Angle really needed to cheat to win. I actually thought the ending makes sense because these two know each other really well. So, of course, it was going to come down to the first mistake. And I think the mistake that Edge made, he went for the spear. Kurt Angle basically kicks him in the face. Angle slam. That's it. But this match was really good. I'd say from an in-ring standpoint, this was probably best match of the show. Then, before the next match, Chris Jericho comes out and he's pissed off. He's like, I'm pissed off because I'm the first undisputed champion. And remember, guys, he's the first undisputed champion. He says this quite a bit in this promo. He's like, I'm the first undisputed champion, and I don't got a match on this show. I'm pissed off. And then he's like, I'm so pissed off at you fans, I'm leaving. Of course, he's involved in the main event, which we'll get into in a little bit. Then we get Eddie Guerrero and RVD for the Intercontinental Championship. Now, with the names involved, you think this match would be really good. I mean, the match itself was good for what it was. The problem was, it felt like it was a tale of two matches. It was basically RVD for the first half gets his shit in, then the second half, Eddie Guerrero gets his shit in, and then the finish happens. It was just, I felt like, honestly, the match was kind of short, even though you could argue, well, some of the matches earlier on were short. Yes. but this match maybe could have had a few more minutes so RVD and Eddie could have some back and forth. There were a couple of pretty cool spots, where RVD hits the corkscrew leg drop, where Eddie's on the barricade. That always looks good. Eddie goes for like the sunset flip powerbomb, but like he gets like really good speed and velocity on that. It looked brutal. You had, and I think there was like it was a good looking match. It's just a match that I feel like could have used a little bit more time. The finish just happens. It's like RVD just sort of gets a comeback, but then of course Eddie does. He's cheating because that scoundrel Eddie Guerrero. Where he has the Intercontinental title belt and he hits him with a neck breaker on the belt, hits the frog splash, and Eddie Guerrero wins the title. Again, it kind of sucks because with RVD, you would think that, oh, well, of course RVD would retain since he just won the belt in Mania. No, Eddie Guerrero won the belt here, which, again, I liked, but the problem is it kind of devalued RVD's win a little bit. Speaking of matches that probably, that had a lot of time, but it was okay, but didn't need the time, and probably you could have cut this a few minutes and add that to Guerrero and RVD. And that was The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, to determine the number one contender for the Undisputed title. Yeah, it was. The problem with this match, it was too long. I think it was drawn out. Like, the beginning of it was kind of. The beginning of it was kind of funny because you had, oh, Stone Cold, oh, hell yeah. He did like a push up randomly and he started throwing out arm drags. I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. And then you had like them brawl a little bit, which that was fun. Scott Hall and X-Pac come out for some reason. I don't know why. They just show up. They don't really do anything. There's a couple ref bumps with Ric Flair. There's a lot of rest holds. A couple false finishes. Austin hits Taker with a stunner, but then Flair was already out. Then you had Taker hitting Austin with a choke slam. Of course, they're kind of, because they're, Austin's Austin, Taker's Taker. Taker's more like a heel at this point, but Austin's like more like, he's Austin, he's the anti-hero, so he's kind of fighting dirty, but then you have the Undertaker who's fighting dirty. It was a match that went on too long, and the finish was just kind of, really, like, Taker hits Austin with he hits Austin with a big boot, because Austin was coming at him with the steel chair because Flair was down. Taker hits him with the big boot, and then Taker pins him, but Austin's foot up was on the rope, and then Flair, at the end of the match, was like, because they did, like, the post-interview, and then Flair's like, oh, shit. That shit. He's like, oh, shit. Woo! The match itself was too long. I felt like it was actually kind of boring in certain areas, but it wasn't a bad match either. It's just something that maybe, if you cut it down a little bit, it would have been better, but hey, what can you do? Then we get the co-main event, which was co-main event quotation marks, and that's Billy and Chuck defending the titles against Maven and Al Snow. Moving on. It was there. It didn't really do anything. It was just an okay match, I guess. It was like kind of filler, but it's like, it was just there. It was boring. You could tell by this point they were really high on Maven. I don't know why they didn't do anything with him because he was in a big, like, high-key spot. Al Snow was training him. He just beat Undertaker at the beginning of the year. He's getting all these title opportunities, so you kind of forget that they were kind of high on this guy. It's kind of a wonder why they didn't do anything with him, like, basically after this. I know he did some big main stuff afterwards, but nothing that really kind of major. And of course, we get to the main event because I'm not even going to bother with the match. Billy and Chuck retain. Who cares? Move on. And that's the Battle of the Egos, ladies and gentlemen. Triple H versus Triple H. Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus the man that OTRS Central has coined God, Triple H, for the Undisputed Championship. Again, title, kind of like something to take away from, at least the title design. The Undisputed title was like, it looked really small for like the first initial design, which they ended up fixing later down the road. Honestly, when it comes to Hogan Triple H, it was pretty solid for what they could do. I mean, for Triple H standards, it was but for Hogan standards, it wasn't half bad. I mean, Hogan was in great shape here. Triple H was in great shape. You could tell Hogan was trying. Like, it was definitely not a in-ring classic, I will say, but the crowd was into it. Hogan, and Triple H could, had the crowd in the palm of their hands, basically. It wasn't like Rock Hogan levels, no. But I would say it was kind of what you'd expect. There was some test of strengths here and there, because again, they're big ripped men, like brother, brother, brother. Um, you had some back and forth here. Hogan, put out came out with some big moves. He ended up doing a RK a cutter at one point, which I thought that was pretty sweet. Um, of course, Triple H was going after the leg of Hogan, and of course, this wouldn't be 2002 WWF main event without a fucking clusterfuck finish. This is where it kind of diminishes the match for me a little bit. Of course, Jericho comes out after, he hits Hogan with the chair because he wants Triple H to win, and then Triple H beats up Jericho. Then Hogan starts hulking up. He's like, brother, 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 I'm going to beat you up, brother. And then he's like doing the Hogan stuff where he's punching him, hits the big boot. He actually hits the leg drop before this, but then Jericho came out. That's when the whole thing happens. And then, of course, Triple H counters the leg drop for the second time, hits the pedigree, and of course Undertaker comes out, ends up costing Triple H the match, hits him with the chair. Taker is about to, put Hogan on Triple H, but then Hogan beats up Undertaker, and then you had Hogan getting a leg drop, and Hulk Hogan is your new WWF champion. It's kind of one of those things where, looking back, I understand why they put the belt on Hogan for nostalgia purposes. I get it. The crowd was hot on Hogan at this point. You kind of want to capitalize on it. But at the same time, you kind of fuck over Triple H a little bit because Triple H just, came back from injury, just won the title. At this point, I wouldn't have minded a screwy finish if it ended in a draw and then maybe having a match down the line. Because the problem is you kind of put yourselves in a situation of if you have Hogan lose, then Hogan kind of loses two big matches in a row. You have Triple H lose, you kind of have yourselves a precarious situation of Triple H is you just kind of fuck him over. But I guess in a way this was kind of the fair compromise, so no one really wins clean, but at the same time, you could have just had Triple H retain, to be quite honest with you. But at the end of the match, Triple H is bloodied, and then he ends up shaking Hogan's hand because Hogan has the ego brother. And of course, Triple H is pissed off. He's like, oh, ooh, I'm gonna get my revenge. Which he ends up getting his revenge down the line with the Reign of Terror, which we'll get into later on in the series. Yeah, Hogan Undertaker's gonna main event Judgment Day. Hogan ends up ending the show celebrating, doing the Hogan taunt like a ooh, 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 like he's doing the Hogan taunt. I look bad doing it. Like I have no muscle. Uh, but overall, this pay per view it was solid. I'm not gonna say it was perfect. I would say from an in ring standpoint, I think it was kind of hit and miss in some areas. There were a couple matches that were like, they were there. They didn't really do anything. I think maybe the highlights of the show, I think, would be the Cruiserweight title match, Angle and Edge, and I would say Hogan Triple H to a degree. Maybe even Guerrero and RVD, but even then, that match was just eh. But I would say overall, it was a fun show. It's definitely better than the shows we get now. Definitely something that if you want to rewatch it, I definitely recommend it. I mean, it's for nostalgia value and just in general, like if you just want a solid pay-per-view to watch, I'd say watch this. I definitely would put this more under the lines of maybe a low B, high C plus area, but other than that, there's really nothing else to say when it comes to Backlash 2002. I had a lot of fun talking about the show. I hope you guys appreciate it. Actually, tell me what you think about the show in the comments below. Do you like Backlash 2002? Did you like the finish? What was your favorite match of the show? Do you think Hogan should have won the belt? Do you think maybe Triple H should have retained? Do you think they could have done something in between? Let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you want to see more reviews like this, which I'm going to do more of these because I kind of want to do more stuff like this, behind the camera. You see my face. And then also, if you just want to sub, just, do that for more content. And of course, hit the like button too. I definitely appreciate it. And of course, click the bell. Yeah, that's about it for this review. The next one I will more likely be doing is Insurrection 2002, where Triple H will be looking for his revenge against the Undertaker. What's gonna happen? Well, we just gotta wait and see. Guys, thank you guys for watching. This is the Osinator signing out. Peace.